Hey folks, this is Johnny and welcome to part 5 of the Faderport 8 series, and what we're going to go through now is the mixer section, and I'm going to show you everything from the different fader views to the mute and solo buttons, the select buttons, and then the controls that go down the left side here. Alright, so to start with, we're going to go through the fader views. Now, the fader views are also reflected in the LCDs, which you can't see, unfortunately, because of the lighting I have available to me here. But you've already seen what the display looks like, and I'll just describe what pops in here as we do the different fader views. So the first one I'm going to go through is all. And as you saw, these faders actually popped up. I have 4 audio tracks. Then I have 2 headphone outputs and then the main out. See, I can control that right there. So in all mode, you see everything. If I had any buses or virtual instrument tracks, all of that would show up in the all view. Okay, so now let's go to VCA faders. So let's say, for instance, I wanted to create a VCA fader. As you can see that there's nothing here at all for VCA faders. So if I wanted to create a VCA fader in Studio One, I am going to select the first track. I'm going to hold Shift and select the last track. I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose Add a VCA for selected channels. And there it is. And you just saw it pop up now in our VCA view. You would also see it pop up if you went back to all. And there it is. It's actually right here. You can see it selected. The VCA is there. So everything updates on all of the different views as you start to add stuff. So for the VCA fader, I can turn them all down. I can turn them all up. Just like that. Really, really simple. I can actually do a control key and click. Whoops, it's not the control key. I am on a Mac, so it is the Apple button. There we go. So that goes up there. So now a bus. Okay, I don't have any buses. So let's say I was to take these 2 acoustic guitars and I was to right click and say add a bus for selected channels. Boom, and there's my bus. So now there's my VCA fader. And then here's my bus fader. And again, if I go back to all, they all show up in the mixer view. Again, everything's updating. Okay, so now I will add a virtual instrument. If I hit the VI button, there's no virtual instruments there. So I'm just going to, very, very simply, I'm going to go to my Mojito and I'm going to drag it in. And there's my virtual instrument. And you see in the VI mode, there is my volume for my Mojito. Very, very simple. So that's how all of these update. So now I'm going to go back to just audio tracks and just showing the audio tracks. And again, if I wanted to see everything, including the virtual instrument, I would just hit all. Let me just make sure. I know you guys can't see it, but let's see. So it looks like the virtual instruments do not show up in here, at least. Oh, no, I take that back. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Okay, so everything shows up in the all mode. So I'm going to go back to audio. So now we've just got these. So there you not only saw me get these things to actually show on the mixer, but you got to see me create them as well. And right now I'm going to right click and I'm going to undo these because it's not something I want for the song. All right, so there we go. All right, so next I want to go through the select and mute and solo buttons. So what we're going to do is bank. Make sure that we're on audio, and I'm going to bank all the way to the very first channel here, and that is my channel 1. And with the select buttons, you select your tracks, and you can see that the color of the track is shown as the color of the buttons. And if you were to change that color, let's take this Tom, and let's change it to blue. The actual button changes as well. A very killer feature. For quick referencing tracks, especially if you're working in large groups of tracks. All right, so we've got the color buttons and we got the ability to select whatever we want. So now one thing that's really important is the ability for the Faderport to update the view in Studio One when selecting banks that are out of view. So, for instance, I'm going to select just channel 1 just so you can see it. Now I'm going to bank all the way to the end of the channels of this song, and I'm going to select the last one here, and you will see that the mixer view here in Studio One will update when I hit that button. Boom, see, it shot the mixer view all the way to the last track in my list. So there's no need to worry about whether what you're seeing on the screen is being reflected on the fader port. So it's very nice to be able to go through the channels and to know when you hit a button, it will update. Now, there is one caveat to that, is that it does not work in reverse. So if on the fader port, I'm on the first bank and selected my track 1, if I scroll in Studio One and then select the last channel like this, it does not update the fader port. So you would still have to scroll to it and then just look for the button that's lit. Maybe that'll be a feature in the future, but I'm not sure. So it'll help you to know that when you actually do that, it will not update the fader port, but the reverse is true. And usually when you're working with hardware, you want your software to update more so than the reverse, because you're going to be focused on your hardware. Some may think that that's not true, so it's really a matter of preference. So for now, just be aware that when you actually go to different channels in Studio One, that the fader port will not update, but the reverse will, just like that. All right, so either way, it's still fully functional in my opinion. That is the select buttons. All right, so now moving on to the solo and mute buttons, we have the obvious here, soloing a couple of tracks, you have the solo clear. Muting a couple of tracks, you have the mute clear. So now if I was to solo tracks from bank 1 and then go to bank 2 and solo a couple of more, now you can actually see that they've updated in Studio One in the view here in the mixer. But when you hit solo clear, it's important to know that you will actually be undoing all of the solos song wide. So on some controllers I've had, like the very old Steinberg Houston that I used to use with Cubase, you would only be able to unsolo the tracks that are in the view of the bank. With Studio One's, with PreSonus's controller, that is not true. And it's very, very nice to be able to know that when you hit solo clear, you are clearing all of the solos within a song, even if they're out of view of the banking. So no matter where you solo, they will clear everything, so that you know that solo clear is just that, a total solo clear. The same is true for the mutes. I'm going to mute a couple of tracks there, and you got mute clear. I'm going to mute a couple of tracks here in bank 1, go to bank 2, mute a couple more in bank 2, and then I'm going to hit mute clear, and as you can see in Studio One, it is reflected that just one tap of the mute clear clears all of the mutes throughout the song. So it's a very, very beautiful thing. And that is the solo and mute buttons. Okay, so now the last section here is this small section right here. And this is the bypass, macro, and link buttons. As of the date of this video, I have yet to learn what the macro and the link buttons do. There's no documentation for them yet that I can find. I've played around with them a little bit, and they changed the state of a few things, but I'm not going to go into them because I really don't have a grasp on what to show you about them. I have a feeling that they are features in progress. So, or it's just not documented and I just don't know what it is. So I don't want to blame PreSonus for anything unnecessary. So as soon as I figure out what these do, I will actually do another video pointing to those. Okay, so what I want to do is show you the bypass option. This is really, really terrific because if you look at the mixer, I'm actually going to make my mixer view short. And if you look at the bottom of the track list here, you've got this button that says Activate All Inserts. And of course, for those of you that have been using the latest version of Studio One for a little while, you will actually know that this actually bypasses all of your inserts on all of your tracks. So you can turn off all the effects and hear the track before you actually did inserts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this view taller so we can see all of our effects. So now we're going to use the select buttons in conjunction with the bypass button. And I want you to watch what it does. So I'm going to select track 2 here, which is a snare track. It's got a lot of inserts right here on the top. Let me see if I can move this down a little bit. Okay, no, there's none underneath. If I hit bypass, boom, I can bypass all of the inserts. And then I can go select another track and do the same thing, and I can bypass all of its inserts. You can see that right there. We'll go to this purple track right here, and we will go ahead and hit bypass, and we can bypass all of those. And you can see that being able to do that, it works very, very quickly. If you just need to bypass them real quick to actually audition to see what the difference is before you put on your effects and afterwards. So now there is a shift function to that button. And there's an all button. Now this is a real extreme shutoff, so be ready for this one. When you have shift activated and you hit the bypass, boom, it bypasses everything. It bypasses your sends and your inserts. A really nice feature. If you are going to export stems, you can just go ahead and hit shift, hit bypass, and all of your effects for all of your tracks are off. You export your stems, you come back here, hit the button again, and all of your effects are back. It is so simple and so easy to navigate and to see the channel conditions when you're actually using this. So with shift, remember it's everything, sends and inserts on all tracks, and not in shift mode, just the inserts on selected tracks. Just like this. There you go. So now I want to go back and I want to turn that on again. There you go. So I hope that this video series has been helpful. Again, I have a couple of things to do updates on. I need to do an automation video to show how to use the faders to do the automation for the things that you want to do. I'm also going to do a full video in putting together both the old Faderport and the new Faderport, and really shows some of the options that you have using both of them. You don't need the old Faderport, but it's nice to have because you can actually set it up to handle certain things as to where you can leave this to set up other things. So it's very nice to have those options. So if you have an old Faderport, don't throw it away, don't sell it, don't do anything unless you really need the cash to buy the new one. I would advise to keep it, save the money for an extra month, and use them both in tandem because they work very, very well together. There's a lot of crossover options, and there are no options that aren't on the other that aren't on the big Faderport. But if you use this, like say in combination with the output mode, you can actually have a master fader, or essentially a 9th fader to the 8 faders on the main Faderport. All right, so this has been part 5 of the Faderport series. There are more videos coming, so please stay tuned. And I want you to rate, subscribe, and like, and make sure that you give me as many suggestions for this baby as you can possibly think up. I will do a video for any question that you have as far as a function. It'll just add to the library. It'll help me teach people more about the Faderport. This is really, by far, my most favorite piece of hardware that PreSonus has put out, and I think it's the most functional with Studio One. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.